Today, imagine a river winding through a lush valley teeming with life, where hunter-gatherers once thrived. Fish leap from the water, deer graze along the banks, and life seems peaceful, abundant, and safe. But beneath that calm surface, danger was always lurking. Neighboring bands watched each other, tension simmered, and survival was never guaranteed. One wrong move could mean death. And then it happened. The first disappearances, attacks in the night, and sudden violence turned everyday life into a war zone. These were humans, not animals, learning that cooperation within their band was life, but aggression toward outsiders was survival. The river became a battlefield. Mud stained with blood, shelters fortified, weapons sharpened, and trust tested in ways that shaped their minds, their bodies, and the very instincts we carry to this day. This is the story of the war beneath the riverbed, of how hunter-gatherers became killers to survive, and how those ancient battles echo in human behavior even now. If you're settling in to watch, grab some water, get comfortable, and let's dive into a world where every step could be your last. Imagine standing on the edge of a river that glimmers like molten silver under the early morning sun. The water flows steadily, carrying life with every ripple. Fish dart beneath the surface, birds wheel overhead, and the trees lining the banks sway gently in a breeze that smells of wet earth and blossoms. This is home, the heart of a thriving hunter-gatherer community that has learned to live in perfect rhythm with the river. For generations, they have known where the best fishing holes are, which berries are safe to eat, and how to follow the tracks of deer and antelope across the surrounding grasslands. Every action is deliberate, every step measured, because here survival depends on understanding the land and each other. Children chase one another through the reeds, laughing as they splash into shallow pools. Their mothers call them back to gather roots and fruits, while elders sit nearby, carving wooden tools and shaping stone points with hands worn by decades of practice. The sound of flint striking rock echoes softly as the community prepares for the day ahead. Everyone has a role, and everyone is needed. Hunters set out in small groups, moving like shadows among the trees, eyes scanning for movement, ears listening for the slightest rustle of a hidden animal. They carry spears and knives, sharpened and ready, but they also carry knowledge passed down through countless generations. Knowledge of how to track, how to predict the weather, how to survive even when the river runs low. The river is more than water and food. It is a meeting place, a corridor for communication, and the center of community life. Stories are told along its banks in the evenings, tales of past hunts, of storms weathered, of the cleverness needed to snare an animal before it escapes. Songs are sung, rhythms echoing the flow of the water, reminding everyone that they are part of something larger than themselves. Cooperation is the thread that holds this society together. Every person understands that their own survival is tied to the survival of the band. A misstep by one could cost many. A successful hunt by one benefits all. As the sun climbs higher, casting sharp shadows across the landscape, the hunters return with their catch. Fish, birds, and small game are divided carefully, shared evenly, ensuring that no one goes hungry. Fires are lit, and the aroma of cooking food mingles with the river breeze. Children learn by watching, by helping, by imitating the movements of the adults around them. It is a peaceful rhythm, a life that feels steady, predictable, safe. But even in this abundance, there is awareness. The river that gives life can just as easily take it away. The seasons change, the rains come and go, and life along the river is always balanced on a knife edge. This balance is delicate and fragile, but for now, everything feels calm. The river flows, the hunters hunt, the children play, and the community thrives. The calm will not last, but today, the river hums with life and possibility, and the people who depend on it are at peace. The river that curves through the valley is both lifeline and boundary. On one side, your band has hunted, fished, and gathered for generations. On the other side, shadows move where another group has made their home. You can see their smoke rising from the far bank in the early morning, curling into the sky and disappearing over the trees. The river is wide in places, narrow in others, and every crossing feels like stepping into someone else's world. Yet for now, the water separates more than it connects. Tension hangs in the air, invisible but heavy, a quiet reminder that survival is not guaranteed and that resources are limited. Your band knows the river intimately. You know where the banks are shallow enough to cross, where the currents are strongest, and which pools hold the fattest fish. You have learned that straying too far could bring you face to face with the other hunters. You watch their movements from a distance, noticing patterns, the way they gather wood, how they spear fish, how they organize themselves. They are like mirrors of your own band, equally skilled, equally hungry, equally aware that the river does not have enough for everyone if times turn bad. Trade and interaction happen rarely and cautiously. Sometimes a child wanders too close to the other side, curiosity outweighing fear, and is called back by a warning shout. Sometimes a hunter catches sight of another human figure moving along the bank and freezes, knowing that this encounter could be harmless or deadly. The river provides sustenance, but it also shapes the rules of coexistence. Each band respects the limits of the other, but respect is fragile. One misstep, one moment of weakness, and the fragile peace could shatter. At night, the river whispers a different story. The moon reflects off the water, and distant voices carry across the current. You hear the other band's laughter or the crack of a fire, and it sends a shiver through your spine. You know that they are watching too. Just as you track them, they track you. Skills learned for hunting animals now serve another purpose. Every movement, every sound, every footprint is carefully considered. The river has become a place of both life and strategy. Despite the tension, there are moments of shared recognition. You see tracks of animals that they have chased, footprints mingling with your own in the mud, evidence that the river is wide enough for both bands to survive if they are careful. Sometimes the river gifts abundance, and both sides can gather food without conflict. But the memory of scarcity is never far. You have heard stories from elders of raids, of attacks long ago, of bands pushed too far by hunger. Those stories are lessons, warnings that even a peaceful day could be the prelude to violence. By the time the sun rises fully over the valley, the river glows golden. You prepare for the day, knowing that your survival depends not only on the hunt, but also on vigilance. Every step along the bank is measured, every movement watched. The river is generous, but it is also merciless, dividing and sustaining life at the same time. And the other band across the water is a constant reminder that even in times of plenty, rivalry is never far below the surface. The mornings feel different now. The river still flows, but the water runs lower, exposing rocks that were once hidden beneath the current. Fish are fewer and smaller, slipping through your fingers when you try to catch them. Birds no longer flock in the same patterns along the banks, and the rustle of animals in the grass is less frequent, quieter, as if the land itself is holding its breath. At first, the changes are subtle. You notice a few empty pools, the smell of damp soil lingering longer than usual. Then the hunters return from the forest with less meat, smaller game, or sometimes nothing at all. Every day becomes a test, a careful measurement of how much the land can still provide. Children who once ran freely now follow elders closely, learning to notice patterns in the wind and the movement of clouds. The elders teach you how to track the smallest signs of life, to recognize when a tree is bending under the weight of fruit, or when the tracks in the mud lead to water. You begin to understand that survival depends not just on strength or skill, but on timing, patience, and observation. Every mistake can cost the family a meal. Hunger is no longer a distant threat. It is here, creeping silently through the camp, shaping the way everyone moves and thinks. The scarcity changes everything. Hunters split into smaller groups, spreading further and taking more risks to find game. Women and children gather roots, seeds, and insects that were once ignored, learning how to process them safely. Fires burn longer at night, cooking the smallest catch with care, making every bite count. Discussions among the elders grow more urgent. Where can the river still provide food? Which hunting grounds remain untouched? How can the band stretch what is left without exhausting the land entirely? Every decision carries weight, and every action ripples through the community. Tension rises along the riverbanks. The other band across the water is facing the same problem, and sightings become more frequent. Hunters return from the far side with stories of footprints in the mud, of camps abandoned too quickly, of desperate signs left in the forest. You learn to move more quietly, to watch for shadows, to anticipate encounters. Survival requires awareness, not only of the land, but of those who share it. The river that once divided now feels like a thin line between life and death. Even in scarcity, the band adapts. Tools are sharpened, nets are repaired, traps are set in new ways. The community shares knowledge freely because losing information could mean losing lives. Children practice techniques of foraging and hunting that were once optional. Each meal becomes a lesson, every successful catch a cause for celebration. The land is harsher, the days longer, and the river less forgiving, but your ancestors have survived before. You begin to understand that scarcity is not just a challenge to endure. It is a force that shapes strength, cunning, and cooperation in ways nothing else can. It starts as a normal morning along the river, the mist rising off the water and the birds calling as if nothing has changed. Hunters set out in small groups, moving through the reeds and the tall grasses, scanning for movement, listening for the faintest snap of a twig. One of the young hunters, a boy no older than 16, takes a familiar path along the far bank, following the tracks of a deer he had spotted the day before. Hours pass, and the boy does not return. At first, the elders think he has wandered farther than usual or lost track of the group. They call his name, their voices carrying across the water, but there is no reply. Anxiety begins to settle like a shadow over the band. By midday, the fear becomes real. The boy is missing. Tracks are found, faint and scattered, leading toward a dense patch of reeds where the river bends sharply. There are signs of struggle, footprints that seem to end abruptly. The hunters follow cautiously, hearts pounding, knowing that the river can hide more than just water. Every rustle, every broken branch, every movement in the corner of the eye feels like a threat. The elders whisper warnings about predators, about other bands, about the dangers that have always been there but were rarely so immediate. Suspicion spreads like fire. Some say the boy may have been taken by animals, that a leopard or a crocodile lurking in the shallows claimed him. Others fear it is the other band, the neighbours across the river, testing boundaries in a desperate bid for resources. Every adult and older child begins to watch one another more closely, noticing subtle changes in behaviour, in tone, in how people avoid certain paths. Trust is fragile, and the disappearance cracks it, leaving uncertainty in its wake. The band organizes search parties, moving along the banks and through the forests, combing the area carefully. Each group communicates silently with gestures, aware that any loud noise could scare away animals or alert potential human threats. Days pass with no sign of the boy. The fear of scarcity now combines with the fear of loss. Hunger is still present, but it is overshadowed by the unease that someone can vanish without warning. Conversations are muted, laughter is rare, and every glance toward the river carries an edge of worry. At night, the camp feels heavier. Fires burn brighter, and people sleep closer together, listening for every sound. Children are tucked safely in the center of the circle. The elders speak in hushed tones about caution and vigilance, about remembering the boy's face and using his disappearance as a lesson. Every member of the band understands that survival is no longer just about skill and knowledge of the land. It is also about watching each other, about sensing danger before it strikes, and about preparing for the possibility that the river can take more than it gives. Suspicion lingers, threading through every interaction, changing the way the band sees itself and the river that sustains and threatens them all at once. The river has grown quieter in the mornings. Fish are scarcer, and the reeds along the banks seem to shiver with a tension that was never there before. Stories begin to spread among the band. One hunter speaks of footprints along the far bank that are too large and deliberate to belong to animals. Another whispers of a broken fishing net, its threads torn as if someone had been there in the night. At first, the elders dismiss the rumours, calling them coincidences or the imagination of the fearful, but the whispers grow louder, carrying through the camp like smoke over the water. Hunters returning from the edges of the territory speak of signs that cannot be ignored. Fires that were not theirs, abandoned tools, broken branches arranged in patterns meant to send messages. The band begins to realize that the neighbors across the river are not merely moving silently through the forest. They are testing the boundaries, creeping closer to the richest fishing grounds, watching, waiting, learning. Every movement along the riverbank is scrutinized. Every splash in the shallow pools is a potential warning. The calm that once defined life along the river has been replaced by vigilance. Conversations in the camp shift from casual stories to careful planning. The elders remind everyone that the river has always been a line drawn by nature, dividing territories and resources. Crossing it uninvited has always carried risk. Now, with resources dwindling, the risk feels immediate. Children notice the tension, seeing their parents speaking in lower voices, watching the far bank more often than before. Even the youngest understand that something has changed. The other band is no longer invisible. They are a presence, a threat, and the first hints of aggression are becoming undeniable. The hunters begin to patrol the banks more frequently, moving in pairs or small groups to cover more ground. Every sound in the reeds or the crack of a twig is interpreted as a potential signal. The band learns to read the river differently. They know that the flow can carry messages, that movement upstream or downstream can indicate another presence. Maps of memory take shape in the minds of the elders and hunters, noting the safest paths, the hidden crossings, and the vantage points from which one can watch without being seen. Fear and suspicion thread through the camp, quiet but persistent. Meals are shared with more caution, eyes darting to the far bank, hands tightening around tools that were once used only for hunting. Nights are longer, or at least they feel longer, as the firelight throws shadows across the camp that seem to move and shift, sometimes imagining faces from across the river. The first hints of conflict are subtle, almost imperceptible, but they are enough to change how every member of the band thinks, moves, and trusts. Life along the river is no longer only about food and safety from the wild. It is about watching, anticipating, and preparing for a presence that has always been there, but is now impossible to ignore. The sun rises harsh and pale over the riverbed, baking the earth and turning the shallow pools into mirrors of cracked mud and dwindling water. The band moves cautiously toward the main waterhole, the one place where the river still gathers in a deep pool, enough for everyone to drink and wash. But today, something is wrong. The surface of the water shimmers with movement that is not fish. Across the pool, figures emerge from the reeds, weapons in hand, eyes locked on your band. The other hunters have come first, claiming the water as their own. A tense silence falls over the riverbank, broken only by the occasional cry of a bird or the ripple of water against stone. At first, words are exchanged, cautious and sharp, demands and warnings carried across the shallow pool. But the river is too narrow for negotiation to feel safe. Fear twists into anger, and anger into action. One of your hunters steps forward, spear raised, and the standoff turns quickly into a scramble. Rocks are thrown, shouts echo through the valley, and the first strike lands with a sickening thud. Instinct takes over. Training from years of survival guides hands and eyes, dodging, parrying, thrusting. The water churns with feet and weapons, mud and blood mixing into the same desperate swirl. Every move is a calculation. The pool is the only source of life in this part of the riverbed. Losing it could mean starvation, dehydration, and the collapse of the band. Survival is no longer abstract. It is immediate and brutal. The fight lasts only minutes, but the river holds the echo of every scream and the stain of every fall. When it ends, both sides retreat, injured and wary. The water still standing between them, but no longer safe for casual drinking or washing. The stakes of survival have been made clear. This is no longer a dispute over territory. This is life and death, written plainly in every cut, bruise, and cautious glance. Back at the camp, the band treats wounds and counts losses, the firelight flickering over tense faces. Even the children understand that something has changed. The river is no longer a quiet provider. It is a battleground. Every decision about where to hunt, when to gather, and how to move is now informed by memory of this confrontation. Elders speak in low voices about strategy, about watching and waiting, about how the river that sustains them can just as easily take everything away. In the following days, the band moves with caution to smaller pools, upstream and downstream, searching for water that is still hidden, learning to share and ration what little remains. Trust in the other side is broken. The quiet understanding that once allowed bands to coexist along the river has dissolved into suspicion and preparation. The river is generous enough for now, but every drop is precious, and every crossing carries risk. The first violent confrontation has set a precedent. Survival is no longer guaranteed by skill alone. It is guaranteed by vigilance, by cooperation within the band, and by readiness to defend what belongs to them at any cost. The waterhole, once a symbol of life, now stands as a reminder that abundance can vanish in a heartbeat, and that the river has a way of teaching the hardest lessons first. The fire burns low in the center of the camp, casting long shadows over the gathered children and young hunters. The elders sit in a circle, their faces lined with years of survival, their eyes reflecting the flicker of the flames. They begin to speak, their voices low but deliberate, telling stories of the battles that shaped the band, of fights over food, water, and territory that happened long before the river seemed threatened. Every tale is a lesson, every memory a warning. Violence is not glorified, but it is understood as part of life along the river, an inevitable force that cannot be ignored. One elder speaks of the time a neighboring band tried to take the river's prime fishing pools, describing how arrows flew and spears clashed as the hunters defended what was theirs. He recalls the fear in his own heart, the panic of seeing friends fall, and the cold clarity that came when survival demanded action. The young hunters listen with rapt attention, imagining themselves in the places of those who fought, understanding that skill and courage were never enough. Strategy, observation, and timing were just as important as strength. Every movement mattered. Every decision could be the difference between life and death. Another elder recounts a night when the river swelled from unexpected rains and a rival band tried to cross silently. They had to defend their camp with what little they had, improvising weapons and learning the terrain in ways they had never practiced before. The story emphasizes vigilance, the need to anticipate danger before it arrives, and the hard truth that those who hesitate or doubt are often the first to fall. Lessons are woven into each anecdote, showing the young hunters that survival is as much about mental preparation as physical skill. The children are taught to recognize warning signs, to read footprints and broken branches, to sense shifts in the behavior of animals that often indicate human presence nearby. They learn the importance of coordination, of moving as a unit, and of protecting the most vulnerable members of the band. Trust in each other becomes a weapon as powerful as any spear or stone. The elders explain that violence is not the first choice, but it is always an option when necessity calls. Knowing when and how to act is the mark of a true hunter, and now it is also the mark of a protector. By the end of the night, the lessons settle into the minds of the young hunters like water into the riverbed. They understand that the world has changed. Peaceful days are no longer guaranteed. Hunger, scarcity, and encroaching rivals make vigilance and readiness essential. The stories of the elders are not tales of glory, but tools for survival, shaping the next generation to be cautious, clever, and unflinching when danger appears. The fire dies down, the river hums quietly, and the band sleeps with a new understanding. Violence is now a part of life, an invisible current flowing beneath every step, every hunt, and every crossing along the river. Night falls over the riverbed with a heavy, silent weight. The moon casts pale light over the shallow pools, making the water glimmer like glass, and the reeds sway gently in the wind as if nothing has changed. But everything has changed. Shadows move where they should not, and the first screams pierce the night. Hunters and sentries scramble from the camp, the sound of running feet echoing across the water. By the time the elders reach the edge of the river, the attack has already happened. Bodies lie scattered in the mud, blood soaking into the soil and the shallow water. The faces of fallen hunters, friends and family, frozen in fear and pain, leave no room for doubt. These are not accidents or careless predators. These are deliberate strikes by another band, creatures who have crossed the line from competitors to predators. The surviving members move quickly, dragging the wounded to safety, covering the dead with blankets of leaves and branches. Fear courses through every person, a cold pulse that grips the heart and muscles. The river that has provided life now seems to mock them with its stillness, reflecting the horror instead of offering comfort. Eyes search the shadows for signs of the attackers, but they are gone, vanished into the night as silently as they came. The band realizes that the other hunters are willing to kill, to take without warning or negotiation, and that survival is no longer only about catching fish or tracking game. It is about defending what is theirs against humans who have become as dangerous as the wild itself. The camp is quiet, except for whispered cries and the snapping of twigs under cautious footsteps. Survivors gather around the fire, huddled together, sharing what little warmth it provides. Elders speak in low voices, explaining the necessity of vigilance, the need to patrol the banks, to guard every approach, to know the terrain as well as they know their own hands. Every lesson from past skirmishes becomes urgent, every strategy for defense a lifeline. The night has taught a brutal truth. Cooperation within the band is now more important than ever, but even unity cannot erase the fear that stalks them along the river. In the following days, movement along the river changes. Hunters carry weapons openly, patrols are doubled, and crossing the water is done with care and calculation. Trust in the outside world erodes completely. Footprints, broken branches, even the faintest sound becomes a potential warning of another attack. The river is no longer just a provider of food and water. It is a battleground, a place where life and death are determined by quick thinking, bravery, and sometimes luck. The memory of the attack lingers, shaping every action. Children watch and learn the cost of vulnerability. Young hunters understand that the world is cruel and that survival demands a willingness to act, sometimes with violence, without hesitation. The river flows on, indifferent to human suffering, and the band moves cautiously along its banks, aware that predators are not always wild beasts. Sometimes they walk on two legs, think like hunters, and strike with intent, leaving blood in the mud and lessons in their wake. The riverbed is quiet in the early morning, but the air is charged with a tension that can be felt in every footstep and every glance. After the night attack, the hunters gather round the fire, examining their weapons and tools with new purpose. Stone axes that were once used to chop wood or butcher game are sharpened more aggressively, edges ground to a deadly precision. Spears are reinforced with sinew and fire, hardened tips, designed not just to pierce the hide of deer, but to strike with lethal intent against anyone who crosses the river. Even the clubs, carved from the hardest wood, are shaped to inflict maximum damage. Every tool becomes a weapon, every weapon a promise of survival. The elders oversee the modifications, guiding hands that are still learning the nuances of turning everyday objects into instruments of war. They demonstrate how to throw a spear with accuracy, how to swing an axe with both strength and strategy, how to hold a club to protect oneself while striking decisively. The young hunters watch and practice tirelessly, knowing that these skills are no longer optional. A single mistake, a hesitation, could mean death. The lessons are not abstract. They are immediate, grounded in the memory of the attack and the fear that it could happen again at any moment. At the waterhole, the band tests the new weapons. Spears fly through the air with precision, axes strike with controlled force, and clubs are swung in rhythm, the sound echoing across the shallow pools. Each hunter learns the weight and balance of the weapon, the subtle shift of muscles needed to deliver power while maintaining defense. The river itself seems to hold its breath, reflecting the seriousness of the training. Survival depends on skill, on preparation, and on the ability to act without hesitation. Knowledge spreads quickly through the band. Hunters share improvements they have discovered, techniques that make a spear more accurate or a club more durable. The youngest members observe, learning not only the mechanics of the weapons, but the reasoning behind each change. The river teaches lessons that are impossible to ignore. It has provided sustenance for generations, but it has also shown that life can vanish in a moment. Tools must evolve with the dangers, adapting to new threats just as the hunters themselves must. By nightfall, the band is more than a group of hunters. They are a unit trained in the art of survival, each member understanding that the weapons in their hands are the difference between life and death. The river continues to flow, indifferent and eternal, but the hunters have changed. Their axes, spears, and clubs carry the history of fear, the knowledge of loss, and the promise of protection. Tools that once served the land now serve the band, turning everyday objects into shields and instruments of power, preparing them for the conflicts that are only beginning along the riverbank. The sun sets low over the riverbed, casting long shadows that stretch across the mud and reeds. The band gathers quietly in the shelter of the trees, faces tense, eyes alert, every movement deliberate. Tonight is different. Tonight is not about hunting fish or tracking game. Tonight is about taking action before another attack can strike. The elders lay out a plan, simple but precise. Each hunter is assigned a position, a path, a task. Silence is paramount. Every step, every breath, every glance is calculated to avoid detection. The river that has always been a source of life is now a stage for the first test of strategy and coordination. The hunters move in pairs, the weight of their sharpened spears balanced carefully in their hands. They step over roots and stones, avoiding the dry leaves that would betray their presence. Eyes scan the darkened waterholes, reeds, and banks, noting every flicker of movement. The band has practiced these skills for months, observing the neighbors from a distance, learning their patterns, anticipating their actions. Now those lessons are put to the ultimate test. The first strategy is not just about offense. It is about timing, patience, and reading the terrain as if it were a living thing. As they reach the edge of the river, the hunters split into designated positions, hiding behind trees and rocks, waiting. The water reflects the moonlight in silvery streaks, and every sound seems amplified in the still night. Then the signal is given, a barely audible call that carries just far enough to be heard by the band and no one else. The hunters advance, with careful steps, moving as one unit, silent and precise. They know that hesitation could cost them the advantage, and that success depends on every member understanding the plan completely. When the other band appears, they are unaware of the trap. Movements that were once casual now seem measured, each gesture examined and predicted. The hunters strike in coordinated bursts, not chaotic violence, but controlled action designed to gain ground, intimidate, and assert dominance over the contested waterhole. The riverbank becomes a theatre of shadow and movement, spears and sticks wielded with the training of months. Every attack calculated, every retreat deliberate. Fear is present, but it is focused, channeled into skill. By the end of the night, the first raid is complete. The other band withdraws, leaving the river under your band's control. The hunters return quietly to camp, exhaustion etched into their faces, but satisfaction mingling with relief. The first strategy has worked. The band has learned that coordination, patience, and knowledge of the land are as crucial as strength or speed. The river continues to flow, indifferent, but tonight it has witnessed the transformation of the hunters into a band capable of planning, executing, and surviving against rivals who are as skilled and desperate as themselves. The river is cloaked in darkness, the moon barely peeking through clouds that drift lazily across the sky. The reeds sway with a quiet rhythm, hiding the secrets of the riverbank and the movements of those who dwell within it. The band moves carefully, steps measured, eyes scanning every shadow, ears straining for the faintest sound. Tonight is different. The air is thick with anticipation, every hunter aware that life and death could hinge on the smallest decision. Stealth is no longer a choice. It is the only weapon between survival and disaster. From their hiding places, the hunters watch the other band approach. Figures move silently, eyes trained on the water, unaware of the ambush waiting for them. The river reflects the moonlight in silver streaks, revealing glimmers of movement that could be fish or could be humans. The hunters breathe slowly, controlling the rising pulse of fear, waiting for the perfect moment. They know that striking too early or too late could ruin everything. The reeds are allies, hiding them, allowing them to merge with the shadows. Every crack of a twig or rustle of leaves is a threat, every heartbeat a countdown. Then the first figure steps too close to the shallow bank. A spear is launched with precision, the tip slicing through the night air. A shout echoes, sharp and unexpected, followed by movement and panic. The ambush erupts in controlled chaos. Spears and clubs strike with deadly accuracy, hands guided by months of preparation and fear sharpened into instinct. The riverbank becomes a battlefield of shadows and reflection, mud and water churning beneath desperate feet. The attackers are fast, but the hunters know the terrain, using every curve, every bend, every clump of reeds to their advantage. The fight is brief but intense. Some retreat into the forest, stumbling over roots, struggling through the undergrowth, while others fall to calculated strikes. The river remains indifferent, flowing silently past, swallowing evidence of struggle in its depths. The hunters do not celebrate, their breaths coming in sharp gasps, their hearts pounding from exertion and terror. They know that survival is not guaranteed, that tonight could have ended differently if timing had been off or courage had faltered. When silence finally returns, the hunters emerge from the reeds, eyes scanning for signs of movement, ears listening for threats in the quiet night. Bodies lie scattered in the mud, and the smell of blood mingles with the river's damp scent. The band has learned a harsh lesson. Stealth and cunning are as important as strength. The riverbank is no longer just a place of fishing and foraging. It is a stage where knowledge, strategy, and bravery determine life or death. The survivors move carefully back to camp, shadows among shadows, carrying the weight of what they have learned. Tonight has changed them. They know now that danger is always near, and that the river can hide predators in plain sight. The river runs quietly under the morning sun, but the camp is heavy with grief. The night's ambush has left its mark, and the survivors move slowly, faces shadowed by exhaustion and sorrow. Some are nursing injuries, their bodies aching from strikes and falls. Others carry the weight of memory, the images of fallen rivals and friends alike pressed into their minds. The hunters who returned alive feel a strange mix of relief and guilt. Survival has a cost, and that cost is now clear in every glance and every silence around the fire. Children notice the absence of familiar faces, the empty spots where older siblings, friends, and cousins used to play. Questions hang in the air, simple but piercing. Elders answer with calm but heavy voices, explaining that life along the river demands difficult choices. They speak of necessity, of the instinct to protect the band, and of the lessons learned too late for some. Every death is a reminder that the world outside the camp is dangerous, and that the river provides only what can be claimed by those willing to fight. The hunters themselves struggle with the acts they were forced to commit. Their hands, once only skilled in hunting animals, now bear the knowledge of taking human life. Faces they saw in the shadows, movements they recognized as familiar, are etched in memory. They question whether their survival justifies the fear and pain they inflicted. Nightmares visit them, and the river, once a source of comfort and nourishment, now seems to echo with the cries and struggles of the fallen. The band gathers in council, discussing what has happened and what must happen next. Strategies are reviewed, not with pride, but with the sober understanding that every future encounter could demand the same harsh choices. The elders remind the young hunters that their actions were necessary, that hesitation could have meant the end of the entire group. The moral burden is acknowledged, but survival does not allow for endless contemplation. There is only preparation, vigilance, and the knowledge that the river will continue to test them. Even as the band continues to hunt and gather, the consequences of the ambush linger. Trust is fragile, even within the group, and conversations carry an edge of caution. Children are taught the value of observation, of understanding both the land and the intentions of others. Each meal, each step along the riverbank is now accompanied by awareness. The price of survival is no longer abstract. It is measured in faces, in blood, in the quiet weight that presses against the chest when the river flows peacefully, reminding everyone that peace can vanish in an instant. By nightfall, the band sits quietly around the fire, each member lost in thought. The river glimmers softly in the moonlight, unaware of the pain and fear it has witnessed. Survival has come at a cost, one that is etched into the minds and hearts of the hunters. The lessons are harsh, but they are necessary. Life along the river demands more than skill or speed. It demands courage, cunning, and the willingness to face the consequences of choices that shape who survives and who is lost to the mud and water beneath the reeds. The sun rises slowly over the river, painting the mud and reeds in shades of gold and amber. The band moves cautiously, every step deliberate, because each life matters more than ever. The night attack has reduced their numbers, and the reality is impossible to ignore. Every hunter, every child, every elder is a thread in the fragile web of survival. Losing even one person now is not just grief. It is a tangible threat to the future of the community. Small population size means that each death could shift the balance between life and extinction. The elders speak in hushed tones about the need to protect the remaining members of the band. They explain that survival is no longer just about gathering food or avoiding predators. It is also about preserving the bloodlines that have carried knowledge and skill for generations. Every child born, every union formed, is vital. Families are encouraged to look after one another, to teach the young everything they know, because losing knowledge now could be as deadly as losing a hunter in the reeds. Reproduction is no longer private. It is a matter of survival strategy. Hunters patrol the banks more frequently, not just to defend territory, but to ensure that no one is lost to rival bands. Each encounter is calculated, each movement planned. There is little room for error, because every life counts toward the future. If a skilled tracker or spear thrower falls, the band loses more than strength. It loses the wisdom needed to hunt, to find water, to survive. The river becomes a place where both war and reproduction are intertwined, where every decision carries consequences that extend generations into the future. Even the youngest members of the band sense the weight of their situation. Children are taught to follow elders closely, to learn the paths of the river, the location of waterholes, and the techniques for tracking animals. They learn how to move quietly, how to observe without being noticed, and how to help in ways that ensure the survival of the entire group. Knowledge spreads quickly because there is no time for mistakes. A child who does not learn could be the difference between life and death in a future hunt or confrontation. At night, the camp feels tense. Fires are lit carefully, not just for warmth or cooking, but to mark the presence of life, to signal to each other that everyone is accounted for. Conversations are quiet, measured, full of reminders about safety and caution. The band understands that the smallest lapse could result in another death, and with each death, the risk to their collective future grows. The river continues to flow, indifferent to the struggles of those who rely on it. The band has learned that survival is a delicate balance, one that requires vigilance, skill, cooperation, and the knowledge that each life is a bridge to the generations yet to come. Every heartbeat matters, every decision counts, and every step along the river is taken with the weight of their bloodlines on their shoulders. The riverbed has changed under the eyes of the band. It is no longer simply a place to hunt or gather water. It has become a battlefield, each twist of the river and cluster of reeds carrying potential advantage or deadly risk. Hunters move carefully, memorizing the natural choke points where the river narrows and currents slow. These are places where an ambush can be set, where a smaller group can hold off a larger one if they act with skill and precision. Every bend, every shallow pool, every tangle of roots and fallen branches is studied and marked in the mind like a living map. Scouts move ahead silently, eyes scanning for footprints, broken twigs, or any sign of movement. The water glimmers faintly under the early morning sun, reflecting shadows that could be animals or humans. Hunters learn to use the terrain to their advantage, crouching in tall reeds, wading carefully through shallows, and stepping lightly over mud to avoid leaving tracks. Paths are chosen not for speed, but for control, to guide rivals into areas where the band has the upper hand. Each step is a test of awareness, each pause a measure of patience. The band sets simple traps along likely approaches, hidden pits covered with reeds, sharpened stakes set under mud, all designed to slow or injure intruders. They practice signaling silently with hand gestures, taps on the ground, and subtle shifts of posture, communicating without alerting anyone across the river. Coordination becomes essential. One misstep could alert a rival, giving them time to retreat or counterattack. The river teaches lessons in geometry, in timing, in reading not only the land but the intentions of others who share it. Even water itself becomes a weapon. Hunters know which channels are shallow enough to cross unnoticed and which pools are deep and dangerous. They understand the flow of the current, the way it can carry sound, the way it can hide movement. Ambush sites are chosen where the river bends sharply, where reeds create blind spots, and where approaching rivals can be surrounded without warning. Every detail of the environment is exploited, transformed from a neutral backdrop into an ally for survival. By dusk, the band has moved through the riverbed as if it were a living entity, using every advantage, anticipating every possible threat. The river, once generous and calm, now mirrors the intensity of their focus. The hunters have learned that skill alone is not enough. Success depends on cunning, strategy, and a deep understanding of the land. The riverbed holds secrets and dangers alike, and those who can read it, adapt to it, and use it wisely hold the power to survive. Every ambush, every trap, every careful step reinforces a hard truth. The river is both protector and threat, and mastery of its tactics is essential to staying alive. The river flows quietly under the pale light of dawn, but the camp is anything but calm. The night attacks and the scarcity of resources have left marks that run deeper than cuts and bruises. Fear has settled among the band like a thick fog, whispering in every glance and every word. Hunters watch each other more closely than ever before, noticing hesitations, sudden movements, or glances that linger too long. Suspicion threads through conversations, small remarks carrying weight far beyond their meaning. Even those who once trusted each other without question now pause, wondering if the smallest mistake could betray them. Jealousy grows alongside fear. Those who are skilled in hunting or crafting weapons draw admiration, but they also attract envy. Young hunters whisper about the choices of the elders, questioning why some paths were chosen and others ignored. Arguments that would have been laughed off in better times now carry the sharp edge of tension. Decisions about who leads, who gathers, who patrols, and who trains the children become fraught with underlying suspicion. The band begins to split, mentally and emotionally, even if they remain physically together. The elders sense the shift and speak carefully, reminding everyone that survival depends on cooperation. They emphasize that the river does not favor individuals but the band as a whole. Yet even their words cannot erase the undercurrent of fear. Every minor error, every perceived slight, is magnified. The constant threat from across the river and the lessons learned from ambushes make every internal disagreement feel like a potential weakness. A quarrel over food rations or the allocation of tasks becomes more than inconvenience. It feels like jeopardizing the survival of all. Children begin to mirror the adults. Play becomes cautious, measured, and observant. They watch interactions closely, learning which behaviors invite trust and which draw suspicion. Knowledge, skills, and alliances within the band are now carefully guarded. Secrets are kept even from siblings. The river has not just shaped hunting and gathering, it has reshaped relationships, turning cooperation into negotiation, loyalty into vigilance, and kinship into a network of cautious trust. By nightfall, the camp is tense. Fires burn brightly, throwing long shadows across faces etched with anxiety. The band rests, but sleep is uneasy. Dreams are filled with imagined threats, both outside and within. The river continues to flow, indifferent to human emotion, but the people along its banks have learned that danger is no longer only external. The enemy within the fear, jealousy, and suspicion can be as deadly as any rival band or predator. Survival now depends not only on skill and cunning in the wild, but on managing the fragile bonds of trust that hold the band together. Every glance, every word, every action carries weight, and the smallest misstep could tip the balance between unity and collapse. The river has become unpredictable, its once steady flow rising and falling in ways the band has never seen. Weeks of drought have left shallow pools cracked and dry, forcing hunters to travel farther and take greater risks to find water. Fish are scarce, plants shriveled, and even the familiar tracks of deer and antelope are fewer and fainter. Hunger presses down like a weight on every shoulder, and frustration stirs quickly into anger. Tensions that were already high now threaten to boil over, because survival is no longer just about skill or courage. It is about navigating a world that is changing faster than anyone can keep up with. Then the rains come, not gentle showers, but sudden storms that swell the river beyond its banks. Campsites are flooded, fires extinguished, and pathways washed away. The band moves quickly, dragging what they can to higher ground, while watching the river churn with mud and debris. Every step is cautious, every crossing dangerous. The same river that has sustained them for generations now threatens to sweep everything away, and the hunters realize that the environment itself has become another enemy. They are forced to adapt instantly, improvising shelters, creating makeshift dams, and learning the patterns of floods that arrive without warning. Disease follows the water and the damp conditions. The band loses members to fevers and infections, adding another layer of fear and loss. Children cry more often, weakened by the heat, the thirst, and now illness. Elders work tirelessly, tending the sick, using knowledge of herbs and water to try to slow the spread. But it is a losing battle. Survival demands both ingenuity and endurance, and each day is a test of how much the band can endure before the river and the land claim more of them. The stress transforms the hunters. Patience wears thin, voices rise in anger over trivial matters, and small disputes escalate quickly. The same environmental challenges that force adaptation also amplify suspicion and fear. Every action is scrutinized. Decisions about who leads, who gathers, and who hunts are debated fiercely, because the wrong choice can cost lives. Cooperation is more necessary than ever, but it comes under constant strain as hunger, fear, and the relentless force of the river and sky press down on every member of the band. By nightfall, the fire is low but fiercely guarded. The band huddles together, listening to the wind and the rising water. They have learned that survival is not simply about skill or courage anymore. It is about endurance, vigilance, and the ability to adapt to hazards that arrive without warning. The river that once gave life now tests every choice, and the band moves carefully, knowing that drought, flooding, and disease are as lethal as any rival. Each day pushes them further, demanding innovation and resilience. They survive, but the cost is etched into every scar, every fear, and every careful step along the ever-changing riverbed. The river is calm in the early morning, but the minds of the band are anything but still. Survival has become more than a daily struggle for food and water. It has penetrated the hearts and thoughts of every hunter, shaping how they think, feel, and act. Fear is constant, a low hum in the background that sharpens reflexes and quickens responses. Every movement along the riverbank is calculated, every glance carries suspicion, and every decision is measured against the possibility of attack. The pressure to survive is relentless, and it transforms the hunters in ways that are both visible and hidden. Aggression is no longer an emotion to suppress. It is a tool, refined and controlled, directed outward when necessary to protect the band or seize critical resources. Hunters have learned to strike swiftly and without hesitation, understanding that hesitation could mean injury or death, yet aggression is balanced by loyalty. The survival of the individual is intertwined with the survival of the group. Hunters protect each other with a fierce dedication, covering flanks, warning of unseen dangers, and sharing the scarce rewards of the hunt. Loyalty has become instinct, forged by necessity over months and years of pressure and danger. Cunning grows alongside aggression and loyalty. The band observes rivals, noting patterns and predicting movements. Every shadow, every ripple in the river, every footstep in the mud becomes information. Hunters learn to hide their own presence while drawing others into traps. They create false tracks, set ambushes in unexpected places, and anticipate reactions before they happen. Survival requires this mental acuity as much as physical skill. The river teaches lessons in patience, deception, and strategy, shaping the minds of those who move along it into careful and calculating predators. Fear remains the constant companion, the invisible teacher. It keeps hunters alert, listening to sounds that others might ignore, watching for signs of danger in every reflection and movement. Fear drives innovation, caution, and adaptation. It also unites the band in shared purpose. Each member knows that mistakes can be fatal and that vigilance is everyone's responsibility. Fear shapes relationships, communication, and cooperation, creating bonds that are both strong and fragile, dependent on the continued survival of the group. By the end of the day, the hunters are both stronger and changed. They carry knowledge of the river, the land, and the enemy, but they also carry the psychological weight of survival. Their minds have adapted to constant danger, molding aggression, loyalty, cunning, and fear into tools that ensure the band's persistence. They are no longer simply hunters of animals. They are hunters of opportunity, protectors of bloodlines, and predators in a world that tests every skill and instinct. The river flows on, silent and indifferent, but the hunters have been transformed by its lessons, becoming creatures shaped not only by the land, but by the pressures of life and death along its banks. The riverbank is alive with tension as dawn breaks, the sky painted in pale gold and soft pink. The band gathers silently, moving like shadows through the reeds, every member aware that today could change everything. This is not a minor confrontation or a small skirmish. Today is the great raid, the decisive strike that will determine control of the riverbed and the scarce resources it provides. Hunters clutch spears, axes, and clubs, their hands steady from months of preparation, their eyes sharp with focus. The lessons of fear, cunning, and loyalty sharpen their movements as they approach the far side of the river. The other band is there, unaware of the planning that has gone into this attack. They move with confidence, thinking the river will protect them, thinking the patrols will pass by without notice. Shadows slip through the reeds, hidden by the early mist, and the first hunters take position, watching and waiting. Timing is everything. Every signal has been practiced, every path memorized. The riverbed itself is now part of the strategy, with natural choke points and hidden channels directing movement, creating the perfect environment for the strike. When the moment comes, chaos erupts. Spears fly with precision, clubs strike with devastating force, and the riverbank is filled with the sounds of struggle, shouts, and the splash of feet in water and mud. The attackers move as one, each member playing a role learned through months of training. The other band is caught off guard, forced into defensive positions they did not anticipate, struggling to regroup as the hunters press forward with skill and coordination. Death comes swiftly, the riverbed claiming some while others flee through the forest, leaving tracks that will be discovered too late. Bodies lie scattered, some in the shallow pools, some among the reeds, blood soaking into the mud, mixing with the river's water. The survivors of the raid are marked by exhaustion and adrenaline, hearts pounding, hands shaking from effort and fear. The river flows calmly, indifferent to the violence, but the territory has changed. Control of key fishing pools and access to waterholes is now firmly in the hands of the band that executed the raid. The other band, weakened and demoralized, retreats, leaving the riverbed under new management, a testament to strategy, preparation, and ruthless timing. As the sun rises fully, the band surveys the aftermath. The cost is clear, and the reality of survival sinks in. Every member understands that the river demands vigilance, cunning, and the willingness to act decisively. Alliances within the group have been strengthened by shared danger, and the lessons of fear and aggression are carved into the minds of every hunter. The river flows on, serene and indifferent, but the raid has reshaped life along its banks. Control has been established, boundaries redrawn, and the riverbed, once a space of coexistence, is now defined by power and the ability to strike first and strike effectively. The river flows silently under the rising sun, reflecting the blue of the sky and the subtle movement of the reeds. But the band carries more than just memories of water and game. They carry scars. Some are visible, raw cuts along arms and legs, bruises from falls and strikes, eyes swollen from blows taken in the chaos of raids and fights. Every hunter who survived the Great Raid bears reminders of what it cost to hold the river, to defend the territory, to protect the fragile threads of life that remain. Pain is constant, a reminder that survival is never without consequence, but there are scars that cannot be seen. Fear and stress have embedded themselves in the minds of the band, altering sleep, temper, and the way every decision is weighed. Children wake at night to the sound of rushing water, imagining enemies in the reeds, remembering stories of blood and struggle passed down in hushed voices. Elders feel the strain in their shoulders and backs, muscles tight with the memory of lifting, running, and defending. The river has taught them that survival requires constant readiness, but readiness leaves its mark. Even laughter carries the edge of caution, a subtle reminder of what is lost when vigilance falters. Stress shapes the body as much as the mind. Hunters move with a careful economy of motion, conserving energy yet poised for action. Their hearts beat faster than they once did, reactions sharpened by months of fear and expectation. Some develop permanent injuries that will limit them for life. And yet these limitations teach others how to adapt, to carry the load, and to compensate in ways that strengthen the group. Every movement, every decision is influenced by the physical and psychological toll of survival. And these lessons are passed silently from elder to child, embedding the memory of danger into the culture of the band. Even deeper are the scars carried in the body itself. Stress, induced mutations ripple through generations, subtle changes in genes that affect how individuals respond to disease, hunger, and physical exertion. Survivors pass on traits honed under pressure, altering the very biology of the band. The river does not just shape behavior, it shapes bodies and bloodlines, leaving fingerprints on DNA that will be inherited by children yet unborn. Each generation carries the echo of past danger in every cell, a living record of survival. By nightfall, the band gathers around the fire, weary but alert. Eyes are wary, bodies ache, and minds replay the events that brought them here. Yet there is resilience in their movements, a quiet understanding that every scar, visible or hidden, tells a story of endurance. The river continues to flow, indifferent to injury, stress, or mutation. Yet the band has learned to read its lessons and adapt. Scars are proof of survival, proof that the hunters have endured what most would not, and proof that life along the river demands strength, cunning, and the acceptance of consequences that will echo through generations. The river glows softly under the moon, silver light reflecting on the calm water, but the camp is alive with movement and sound. The band has gathered in a circle, a space cleared along the highest point of the riverbank. Fires flicker in the night, casting long shadows that dance across faces etched with grief, fear, and determination. Tonight is not about hunting or gathering. Tonight is about remembering, about honoring those who have fallen, and about reinforcing the bonds that hold the survivors together. Violence has become part of life, but it has also become part of ceremony, ritualized to give it meaning and to prepare the living for what is to come. Elders begin the ceremonies with low chants that echo across the water, telling stories of the fallen, recounting their courage, skill, and the roles they played in the survival of the band. Names are spoken aloud, and children repeat them, learning the importance of memory and the weight of legacy. Each story is precise, filled with detail about hunts, battles, and moments of sacrifice, allowing the living to feel the presence of those who are gone and to understand the lessons embedded in their lives. The river listens silently, reflecting the flames and the faces of those who will continue the struggle. Then the rituals shift to action. Hunters perform precise movements that mimic combat, each gesture controlled and deliberate. Spears are thrust, axes swung, and steps taken as if fighting invisible enemies. The motions are practiced, repeated, and learned by the younger hunters. Through these ceremonies, aggression is transformed into discipline, fear into skill, and unity into a living force that binds the group. The ritual reminds everyone that violence is not random or chaotic. It is a tool, a necessity, and a shared responsibility that must be respected and mastered. Offerings are made at the river's edge, gifts of food and crafted tools, left in memory of those who cannot eat or wield weapons themselves. Water is poured over stones and reeds, carrying prayers and thoughts into the flowing current. The band watches in silence, knowing that the river will carry these gestures forward, blending grief with reverence, sorrow with preparation, and loss with purpose. Each act strengthens the bonds within the camp, reinforcing loyalty and cooperation, while simultaneously teaching the young hunters the seriousness of life and death along the river. By the time the fires burn low and the first light of dawn touches the river, the rituals are complete. The band is physically weary but mentally focused. They have remembered, mourned, and prepared. The ceremonies have reaffirmed the connection between survival and violence, between memory and action. Life along the river is unforgiving, but the rituals create order, unity, and resilience. They transform grief into readiness, fear into respect, and aggression into disciplined skill. The river continues to flow, indifferent to ritual or emotion, but the band has learned to honor both the dead and the living, weaving remembrance and preparation into the rhythm of life that will carry them through every challenge yet to come. The sun rises weak and orange over the river, but the scene is anything but peaceful. The riverbanks are quiet in a way that feels wrong, the usual rustle of birds and movement of animals replaced by silence. The aftermath of the great conflict stretches for miles. Bodies lie where the battles occurred, some partially submerged in the shallow water, others tangled in reeds and mud. The river runs red with blood, staining the once fertile banks and reflecting the horror that has passed through this place. Entire clans have vanished, leaving nothing but traces of struggle and the empty spaces where families once thrived. The survivors move cautiously, their eyes scanning for signs of danger, their hands clenching the weapons they have learned to use with deadly skill. Every step feels heavier, as if the weight of the fallen presses down from the sky itself. They pass the remains of those who were once hunters and gatherers like themselves, remembering faces and names, imagining what their lives might have been if the river had not demanded so much. The landscape itself seems transformed, not by water or time, but by the violence that has carved its mark into the mud, the reeds, and the hearts of everyone left alive. The camp is silent, filled with shadows of grief and fear. Children cling to elders, asking questions that cannot be answered. The elders speak softly, reminding the band that survival is not guaranteed, that the river can give life one moment and take it away the next. They speak of the necessity of vigilance, of understanding that the emptiness around them is proof of the stakes that govern every step along the riverbed. Lessons in strategy, caution, and skill are reinforced, now marked by the loss of entire groups that failed to anticipate or defend themselves. Every remaining hunter knows that the river has become a place of danger and opportunity. Empty hunting grounds are both a curse and a chance. Resources remain, but they are tainted by the knowledge of what it took to claim them. Every fish, every bird, every deer is a reminder of the thin line between life and death. The survivors move with a mixture of fear and calculation, wary of unseen threats and prepared to act with swift precision. They understand that dominance along the river comes at a cost, measured in lives and blood. As night falls, the river reflects the fading light in dark, shimmering patterns. The band sits quietly, tending to wounds, whispering names of the lost, and planning the days to come. They carry scars in body and mind, reminders that survival is not natural but earned. The river runs red not only from what has passed, but as a warning of what might come. It teaches that every moment is precious, every choice matters, and that life along its banks is a balance of skill, courage, and unrelenting vigilance. The river flows on, indifferent and eternal, while the survivors adjust to a world emptied of former neighbours, carrying the lessons of death, loss, and the fragile triumph of endurance. The river winds through the valley under the morning sun, calm and indifferent. Yet the band moves with a new purpose and caution. The battles, losses, and scarcity have left marks on every member, but they are learning to adapt. Hunters sharpen spears with care, experimenting with new shapes and angles that improve range and accuracy. Stone axes are reinforced with leather bindings, clubs are weighted and balanced differently, and nets are repaired and redesigned to catch fish more efficiently. Every tool is now an extension of survival, modified for the threats that lurk in the reeds and forests, not just for catching game. Shelters change as well. The band has learned to build with speed and discretion, using reeds, branches, and mud to create hidden spaces that can withstand sudden floods or attacks. Elevated platforms along the riverbank provide vantage points for watching movement in the water and forest. And pits and barricades are cleverly concealed to give the hunters the advantage in any encounter. The river teaches constantly, revealing which designs work and which fail, and the band adapts with patience and observation. Every shelter, every hiding place, is both protection and a lesson in ingenuity. Social structures shift too, reshaping the hierarchy within the band. Leaders are chosen for skill, intelligence, and the ability to make quick decisions under pressure. Elders continue to guide the young, but responsibilities are distributed more broadly, with hunters taking turns in patrol, strategy, and training. Communication becomes more precise, with signals, gestures, and quiet codes allowing coordinated action without exposing the band to outsiders. Trust is earned and reinforced through cooperation, and every member understands that survival depends not just on strength, but on loyalty, skill, and knowledge shared across the group. Innovation extends beyond weapons and shelters. The band experiments with gathering and food storage, learning to dry fish and roots to preserve them for lean times, and discovering which plants are most nutritious and resilient. Waterholes are monitored carefully, and techniques are developed to ensure access even when the river rises or falls. Small rituals emerge, teaching children and new hunters about risk, territory, and the consequences of every choice. Adaptation becomes a mindset, a way of thinking that merges observation, strategy, and careful calculation into every movement along the river. By nightfall, the band gathers around the fire, the flames casting shadows over faces marked by both experience and hope. They discuss improvements, share knowledge, and pass on lessons learned from mistakes and successes. The river flows on, indifferent to their innovation, yet each member knows that their survival depends on it. The band has learned that adaptation is not optional. It is the only way to endure, to thrive, and to claim life from a world shaped by danger. Every spear, shelter, and strategy carries the wisdom of hardship and the promise of continued survival along the ever-changing riverbed. The river flows steadily, reflecting sunlight on its rippling surface, but the band has changed in ways the water cannot show. Life along the river has forced a transformation, one that is visible in every movement, every glance, and every decision. Hunters are no longer only hunters. They are killers, skilled in both defense and attack, trained by necessity and sharpened by experience. Aggression toward outsiders has become instinctual, a protective reflex born from months and years of constant threat. The river has shaped them, carved them into a form capable of both survival and destruction. Within the band, cooperation is stronger than ever. Every member understands that their lives are interconnected, that failure to act, to watch, or to protect can mean death for themselves and for others. Children are taught the skills of hunting, the lessons of stealth, and the strategies of defense alongside values of loyalty and trust. Elders supervise, ensuring that the knowledge of survival is preserved and transmitted. Sharing food, guarding waterholes, and teaching the young are not optional. They are as crucial as spear, throwing, or fire making. Survival has demanded unity, and the band has learned that cohesion is strength, but outside the band, aggression is constant and ingrained. Rival groups are no longer seen as neighbors or competitors. They are threats, potential killers, obstacles to the survival of the band. Every encounter is measured, assessed for risk, and met with calculated force. Stealth and cunning, once useful for hunting animals, are now deployed against humans. The lessons of ambushes, raids, and riverbed tactics are remembered and passed on, creating hunters who are as dangerous to outsiders as they are skilled in sustaining life. Violence has become both a necessity and a language, a way of communicating dominance, survival, and the limits of tolerance along the river. The river itself mirrors these changes. Its channels, pools, and reeds are no longer neutral spaces. Every bend, every shallow crossing, and every hidden channel is considered in planning and strategy. The band reads the river like a living map, aware that each path can hide danger or opportunity. Their skills, once tuned for food and safety, are now honed for confrontation and defense. The river has taught them to be patient, vigilant, and merciless when survival demands it. As night falls, the band gathers quietly, firelight flickering across determined faces. There is no celebration of the violence, only the acknowledgement that life has been transformed. The river continues to flow, unchanging, while the hunters have evolved into something else. They are unified within, lethal toward outsiders, and forever shaped by the demands of survival. The lessons learned along the river have created a band that is resilient, cunning, and dangerous. A community where cooperation ensures life and aggression towards strangers guarantees that life is protected. The river has forged them, and they are no longer simply hunters. They are killers, bound by necessity and sharpened by the relentless pressures of their world. The river flows quietly, its surface catching the light of the rising sun, but its history is etched into the minds and bodies of those who once walked its banks. The battles, ambushes, and survival struggles have left marks far beyond the mud and reeds. They have shaped human behavior in ways that echo across millennia. Territoriality, the need to protect land and resources, grew from these early conflicts. Hunters learned that claiming space and defending it was not optional. It was the difference between life and death. That instinct, carved into the human mind by necessity, persists today in our sense of property, boundaries, and the fierce pride we take in the places we call our own. Warfare itself emerged from these pressures. The band that survived the river learned that violence could be a tool, not just a reaction. Strategy, stealth, and coordination became as important as strength or skill. These lessons have carried forward in human history, showing up in the way groups organize for conflict, plan attacks, and defend themselves. The instincts honed in the reeds and along the waterholes of a distant past are still visible in the military tactics, territorial disputes, and even competitive behaviors of modern society. Humans learned that aggression, when calculated and controlled, could secure resources, protect kin, and ensure survival. At the same time, cooperation within the band became vital. Trust, communication, and shared responsibility were essential for survival. These early social structures, forged under constant threat, reinforced the importance of alliances, social bonds, and collective effort. Human communities learned that strength is not just individual but communal. This instinct for cooperation has echoed through time, shaping our ability to form families, societies, and civilizations. The skills needed to survive the river, teaching the young, sharing knowledge, guarding each other, laid the foundation for the complex social networks we rely on today. Even the psychological marks remain: fear, vigilance, and the awareness of potential threats became part of human nature. Early humans adapted not only physically but mentally, learning to read others, anticipate danger, and balance aggression with caution. These patterns of thought and behavior, refined by the pressures of survival, echo in modern decision-making, in the ways we assess risk, negotiate conflict, and protect ourselves and our communities. The river taught lessons that cannot be unlearned, shaping instincts that persist even in a world far removed from shallow pools and reeds. As the sun rises higher, reflecting on the calm water, it is clear that the echoes of those ancient conflicts are everywhere. They have shaped who we are, how we interact, and how we understand territory, loyalty, and survival. The river flows on, indifferent to time, but the human species carries its lessons in blood, in mind, and in behavior. The violence, cooperation, and strategy of the riverbed have become a blueprint for human life. From tribal conflicts to modern societies, the survival instincts of those ancient hunters resonate still, reminding us that the past is never truly gone. It lives within us, shaping how we fight, protect, and belong.